Techno-orientalism, utilitarianism, and Gore-Tex. Techwear is a marriage of three seemingly unrelated things that blend together into a mix of a monochromatic cyberpunk ninja. With roots deep in popular culture, yet popularized by the internet, techwear is a perfect fit for those looking to brave the outdoors without rain checks. Let's take a look at what techwear is, where it started, some prominent techwear brands, if techwear is dead, dying, or not, and more in a brief history of techwear. So what is techwear really? Before we take a look at the history of techwear, it's important to understand what techwear really is. Techwear stands for technical clothing or technical apparel. Designed with the human body in mind, techwear embodies utilitarian clothing that merges functionality with aesthetic. The main appeal of techwear is its enhancements to everyday life, whether that means the extra pockets many techwear jackets tend to have, or their ability to keep you warm and dry in the rain. They also commonly stretch and allow for maximum movement. If you've just come across the techwear hashtag on Instagram, or saw a guy wearing an Urban Ninja fit, I find it important to view techwear as a spectrum. On one hand you have function, and on the other hand you have fashion. Those in the techwear community know that two camps have developed, both strongly supporting either side. Some embrace techwear mostly or purely for its functional use. Others prefer pieces that display the aesthetics of techwear, with straps, sharp angles, and 50 shades of black. Either way, everyone is free to interpret techwear as they see fit, because at the end of the day, your own enjoyment is what really matters. There is a lot more to understand about the nuances of techwear, its social implications, techno-orientalism, minimalism, supermodernity, etc. But I want to keep this video brief and about the actual history of techwear, so I'll cover this in a future video. But moving on, let's take a look at the rise of techwear. Like I mentioned earlier, modern techwear's rise coincided with the prevalence of the internet, when visual aesthetics such as cyberpunk started gaining traction. Modern techwear began its journey in 1969, when William L. Gore and his son Robert W. Gore invented Gore-Tex, a waterproof, breathable membrane that can repel liquid water while allowing water vapor to escape. It is extremely lightweight and suitable for all weathers. For the invention of Gore-Tex, Robert Gore was entered into the US National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2006. The story of Gore-Tex is slightly more nuanced than this, but I'll leave that for another time. What's important is the impact Gore-Tex had on the fashion industry, and its invention allowed for the consumer to have access to what is essentially space-grade materials. Gore-Tex, also known as Teflon, can be found in spacesuits and even lunar landers. One name in the world of techwear you can't set a foot in without hearing is that of Errolson Hugh, a Canadian-Chinese-Jamaican designer based in Germany who in 1994 co-founded the brand Acronym. While I don't want to go into too much detail about Errolson Hugh and Acronym specifically, as this is more of a generalized history of techwear as a whole, I think that it's pretty important to mention that Errolson Hugh and Acronym can be linked with the rise of the tech ninja. Founded in the early 90s, Acronym began its journey by quietly designing outerwear for client brands, especially in the snowboarding market, before finally kicking off its own brand a few years after starting. By the 2010s, Acronym had finally began seeing a rapid rise in popularity. Acronym was seen as expensive, yet dark, edgy, and extremely reliable. Techwear as a whole would grow quickly, spread by its strong online presence. Unfortunately, much of the selection of techwear at the time was financially unattainable by much of the streetwear market, and while appreciated for what it was worth by the people, only the rich could realistically afford it. Errolson Hugh and Acronym would continue to skyrocket into legendary status in the fashion world, and Errolson Hugh would go on to have his influence in a large part of the techwear world, such as collaborative credits with Nike ACG, Stone Island Shadow Project, and Arc'teryx Veilance, which in turn have all developed into their own staples in the world of techwear. Techwear, and especially Acronym, could be seen on celebrities such as John Mayer, A$AP Rocky, Drake, and even former US President Bill Clinton. Errolson would also design the flight suits worn by The Rock and Jason Statham in the Fast and Furious spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. John Mayer can be quoted as saying, "These aren't mass-produced by any means, ... they're artisan-made." Kanye West also paid the Acronym studio a 2-hour visit to study their archives and requested to, quote, send a team of photographers over so he could have it on disc. The work of Acronym and Errolson Hugh goes beyond just the subgenre of techwear and even the fashion industry as a whole. If I were to go into more detail about Acronym, I'd be here all day, so I'll leave that for another time. In my research for this video, I came across a Reddit post on r/male fashion advice from 2016, titled Effort, Long, Techwear, a Postmortem, by user Utilitarianism with 161 upvotes and 105 comments. In it, the original poster goes into detail about why he thinks Techwear is dead. In fact, if you Google "is Techwear dead?", this post comes up in the top results that states bluntly in bold, "Techwear is dead." So let's talk about it. 4 years ago in 2016, there was consensus at the time that the stylistic force Techwear was dying. It's true, while Techwear had made waves in the ocean that is fashion, Techwear simply never fell into mainstream culture, and its pricey nature certainly didn't help. Techwear also had a nerdy feel to it, and folks were encouraged to treat Techwear as a lifestyle more than just an aesthetic. Perhaps the OG Techwear purists have moved on. In the Reddit thread, there are arguments that go back and forth in each direction. Many of the original posters' comment replies have been deleted, which confuses things even more. What is clear though, is that in terms of popularity, Techwear certainly hasn't seen its final days. In the era of the pandemic, the introduction of masks into the world's collective closet has fanned the flames of a new era of techwear, one that incorporates masks as a key fashion accessory into one's wardrobe. Monochromatic fans worldwide rejoiced. You could live out your cyberpunk ninja cosplay dreams out in public, and be seen as socially conscious at the same time. A quick look at the Google Trends for the term techwear shows that October of 2020 saw a massive increase in traffic after much of the world re-entered a second lockdown, but has been on an exponential rise since the June of 2020. Personally, the amount of techwear related posts I've seen on Instagram since the beginning of the pandemic has been staggering, as if everyone and their mothers are beginning to open up to the fashion subgenre. But techwear's rise to mass popularity hasn't been entirely good for the subgenre. Recent spikes in popularity has meant that techwear has seen a shift from innovation and ergonomics to a profitable aesthetic. There have been a lot of cheap techwear brands popping up that sacrifice function for aesthetic fashion, which again is completely fine depending on what you're going for. But some in the community have seen this as a dumbing down for the subgenre as a whole. If you're looking to get into techwear, I'd recommend you check out This Is Antoine, who is seen as the poster child of techwear on YouTube. Frugal Aesthetic also has a pretty funny video on why techwear is so hype, which I also recommend if you're interested in the subject. If you want brands to look into, I'd suggest checking out Acronym, obviously, Nike ACG, Adidas Y3, Arc'teryx, and even Uniqlo. Decide whether you're going for function or fashion. There's nothing wrong with going for either one. Techwear is becoming more and more undefinable. Just because someone is wearing a puffer North Face jacket and cargos doesn't necessarily mean that they're quote-unquote techwear. Maybe they're just cold, and during the winter months, almost everyone is wearing quote techwear. So what I'm trying to say is techwear is what you make it, and you can make whatever you want. In closing, techwear is a huge and incredibly nuanced subgenre in fashion that is growing more popular by the day. Black masks or gaiters look really cool, and who knows if this trend is going to stick around after this whole pandemic thing is over. So get out there while you can, and express your inner tech ninja. Alright, so at this point in the video, I've about wrapped up all that I have to say about the brief history of techwear. But I researched this topic for quite a while and read a lot of resources. I have a lot more I want to say about the subject and the brands that make it. So stick around and subscribe if you're feeling generous. Check out my other video, A Brief History of Supreme, if you're interested in Supreme or the fashion world in general. I have a lot more videos coming soon, and I like to think that I improve with each one. I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.